Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy today to present some of my ongoing research projects and future research plans to you. And the topic today of my presentation is shown on the slide, which is jobs, housing relation, commuting efficiency, and policy scenario. I will use Beijing, one of the cities now has the highest commuters pain index as my case study. And here's the overview of my presentation today. First, I will try to finding the bigger context for my research, which is increased congestion. Again, it's the backdrop of increasing urbanization in developing world, and then associated with that congestion, it has a lot of consequences contributed by congestion. So that's the bigger overall context of my research. Then I talk about with this congestion, as planners or as policy makers, what we can do about that. And then from planning's perspective, I think that the one missing piece in that proposal particularly by the Beijing municipal government is the job housing relationship. As a planner, I cared about that, so I want to do a little bit more about that. So I will going back to the existing literature to identify the gaps, and then try to also on the one hand, I try to better improve the existing proposal. On the other hand, I was trying at the same time try to fill some gaps in existing studies, and then later I will detail the case study of Beijing, and then I will also share with you some of my future research plans. And as you all know, in rapidly urbanized world, urbanized country like China, and particularly in big cities, increasing congestion is now a problem, a serious problem. And with that, we have a lot of problems associated with increased series or increased congestion. The bad air quality or crazily bad air quality is one of them. The other one was the really painful commuters. And here you can show that Beijing was the city that has the worst the commuter pain index according to the IBM surveys. And what we can do about congestion, except this idea of the bicycle lanes, which might not completely feasible for all cities. And this is Beijing's proposal. I think their proposal can be summarized into several words, which is lottery, restriction, pricing, and rail transit. With lottery, you will know that Beijing, in order to get a new car, you need to run a lottery. And then they only allow the winner to purchase a new car getting a local license plate. And also they restrict certain cars, for example, the non-local license, the cars without local license plate to enter the inner city for certain hours. And they also start charging more parking in the inner city. And they're also asking more money, more subsidy from the central government to expedite their rail transit construction. But to me, all the proposals of Beijing has one missing piece there, which is, I think, the job housing relationship. And related to that with another concept of commuting efficiency. Let me explain to you what do I mean by this job housing relationship in commuting efficiency, which is also called access commute framework in the existing scholarship. In this simplified cities with only 4 homes and 4 workplace, if everyone was able to find a home nearest, everyone was to find a job that is near to his home, then we can have the minimum commute for everyone. But there's also the worst scenario that anyone cannot find a job within proximity to his home, and so have to travel to the furthest place to work. Then we had the maximum commute for everyone. But in reality, I think the actual commute will be somewhere in between. So now we have three indicators: minimum commute, actual commute, and the maximum commute. And using these three indicators, we can have some new index for us to measure the commuting efficiency and to measure the job-housing relationship. And the first one was what we call the access commuting percentage. And it's ranged from 0 to 100. And similarly to excess commuting, we can also have a commuting capacity use, which will also range from 0 to 100. And here, that Ms. Van der Rohe was saying, less is more. The smaller the access commuting indicator, the smaller commuting capacity use indicator we have, the better the job housing relationship it is, the better commuting efficiency we have for a city or for a region. So with that kind of background information, now we can kind of going back to look at existing scholarship, and then compare that with the proposed studies we have in mind. So that I can see that in this proposal studies of Beijing, I think we do kind of improve or fill some gap in the existing studies. For example, most studies has been done in the Western context. But if we were able to conduct a case study of Beijing, and then you will fill some gap there with some new type of cities, on top of existing studies. And then in the past, the bus commuters has rarely been considered as a separate group in the access commuting framework. But if we can separately study them, then we also can fill some gap in existing studies. And in the past, the data sources are dominated by household travel surveys and rarely enhanced by the traditional planners approaches to collecting data, like interviews, field trips, etc. But in this study, if we use smarter data and enhance those data by local expert interviews, field trips, we can also fill the gap there. Lastly, I think in the existing studies, I don't think there's any visualization with the actual commute and minimum commute to inform the people and inform decision makers. But in this case study of Beijing, I think we also try to overcome that situation, try to visualize the flows associated with actual and minimum commutes, so that we can better inform the public and in particular the decision makers. And this is some background information about the case study site, Beijing Metro. And Beijing Metro now has over 20 million residents. As a comparison, Boston Metro has 4.6 billion. So do you have a bit bigger concept regarding how big the Beijing Metro is in terms of population size? In terms of land size, the Beijing Metro is a little bit bigger than Boston Metro. It's about 5,800 square miles. And the Beijing Metro do have an intensive bus system, and has about nearly 30,000 buses and nearly 1,000 bus routes. And the length of those routes are over 112 miles. And then one particular thing I want to mention was that Beijing's bus system was heavily subsidized by the central government, and each trip costs only, I think, 9 US cents, and partially because of the load and the intensive bus network, and 28%, according to a survey. According to local household travel survey, 28% of the commuters will commute by public transport, in particular by bus. And then, according to our smart card data, there are 216,000 more full-time bus commuters, which means that these commuters use the bus to commute on daily basis. And this is just another map showing how intensive the Beijing's network is. To your left, showing the unit of analysis we use for these studies, which is the traffic analysis zone by local planning agency. And this is just the smart card data used by Beijing bus commuters. Using this smart card data, you can get cheaper fare, bus fare, even cheaper fare, bus fare for your trip, for bus trip. As I mentioned, then if your smart card data can be as cheap as 9 cents per trip. And I already mentioned about the data from the smart card data. You may ask how you enhance the smart card data by other source of data. Or yes, we do enhance those data by local expert interviews. We do using housing searching engines for us to better understand what's the actual built environment looks like for bus commuters' homes. What's the physical condition or physical attributes of the workplace of the bus commuters? And we also use 3D maps for us to better understand what kind of amenities associated with the bus commuter's home and also workplace. We're also making field trips so that we making sure that what we got from the local experts, from the sourcing search engine, the 3D map are the correct information. And we do have we do have to to use some computer scientists for us to better process the smart card data, because as I showed in the last slide, there are 77 millions of trip records. We do need some computer scientists for us to get the commuter data we need. Basically, we use query. The query was based on the rule-based and decision tree approach. I don't want to go to detail, but based on those queries, we were able to identify commuters' bus stop origin and destinations. And we try to use the geo references. We use geo references and buffer analysis for us to identify the most probable commuters' homes and workplace at the traffic analysis zone level. And for other the data we collect via the traditional planning approach, like local interviews, and we just follow the traditional way of processing those data. For example, we just use the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, for example. In terms of the methods of estimate the minimum and the maximum commute, there's been existing transportation program and linear program. We just follow those to calculate the minimum and the maximum commute for the bus commuters. Once we identify the origins and destinations at the traffic analysis zone level, that's not a big problem. The big challenges was try to visualize those flows associated with the bus commuters' flows associated with the minimum and the actual commute. Yes, GIS come into the picture. Actually, we use GIS to visualize those maps. And these just examples of those maps that we map out using GIS. And this, to your left, showing the actual bus commuters' flows that is occurring in Beijing during the week that we have data for. To your right, showing if we first find some way to optimize the commute. For example, every bus commuters was able to move to the workplace that's nearest to his home, and that will be the optimized pattern. So putting these two images together, I think we can better inform the local decision maker. For instance, maybe they might need more affordable housing options around the Tiananmen and around the epicenters of Beijing, which is the Tiananmen Square, you all know, particularly in about 5 miles north to the Tiananmen Square. And we also were able to get extra data, the car commuter data, which is based on local household survey, to making some comparison of the bus commuters' flows and then the car commuter flows. As you can see, that's also show the beauty of the smart car data, which is a big data. you can see that we can have better picture of the local bus commuters' actual commute. But for those data that based on the car commuter data based on traditional way of household travel survey data, you can see that we kind of lose some pictures. If we know something from the household survey, which has about 50,000 samples already, but still compared to the smart card data which provided by us with 200,000 samples. That's relatively speaking, the car commuter commuter flow data, flow picture that we were able to use GIS to map out was kind of an incomplete picture compared to the big data kind of base bus commuter flow data. And we are not just satisfied to identify those minimum or the maximum, the actual describing the actual commute flows that people have been able to estimate for other cities. We are also interested in particularly locations or hotspots where job housing separations can happen. This is just a map showing some typical hotspots that job housing separation can happen. We make field trips, we interview local experts, and we use the housing search engines for us to establish some protocols for these hotspots. In terms of land use attributes, what kind of land use at the neighborhood, at the traffic net zone level might cause some job housing separation. These are just some guidelines, we roll for local planners and decision makers. You can see we also try to lend these guidelines to some GIS tools. We have some spatial index in the figure. And this just showing you then how we can use the 3D maps that are widely available now for city of Beijing, for a big city like Beijing. Free, which is free for us to better understand what kind of amenities are associated with the job housing separation hotspots and what kind of built environment they actually have, for those job housing separation, hotspots. And we also make field trip. We also taking photos of our own. These are just some photos I took myself in those hutong, which is a lot of row house built in back in the 1950s to understand better what kind of built environment, what kind of amenities that the bus commuter actually have around their residential area. And this just showing you some the typical workplace of the bus commuters. You can see that there's some high-end residential areas which some bus commuter commute to rather than commute from. They actually work there as a service workers or some other service-related jobs. And you can see there's office park. There should be high-end apartment residential area, and those also cause some job housing separation there in Beijing, particularly in the suburban. And in terms of the actual findings, I think we were able to identify the minimum commute and the maximum commute, actual commute for bus commuters using much bigger samples. Some will say that maybe we get a full sample of the bus commuters. Given that the bus commuter, if they use a swipe card data, the swipe card, they actually get heavily subsidized bus fare. So in that, we can see that Beijing's minimum commute for bus commuter was much. It's only about one half of Boston's commuters, or almost. That indicates that in theory, Beijing's bus commuters has very good quantitative balance of job and house. But in reality, they have to commute longer commute distance. That's because of what we have described just now was the kind of job housing separation for various reasons. And in terms of the commuting capacity, the Beijing's urban function of potentially provided to the bus commuter was about 15 miles. That meaning that Beijing's average commuting distance was also about 5 miles, but they can getting as worse as 15 miles. So there's a lot of potential for Beijing's bus commuters, commuting distance getting even worse. And comparison, the average commuting distance for Boston, this is 2000 data. It was only 7.6 miles, but it can be getting as worse as 26 miles. That's another person's studies, so I just cited them. But if I was high, I was interested in doing update study for bus of the Boston's commuter, maybe focus on bus commuters or public transport commuter as well. And this was the market map showing the job housing relationship in Beijing, and as a comparison of that with the Houston's job housing relationship or the commuting capacity utilized rate. As you can see that Beijing's bus commuter do have a worse. If we ignore the mode trace tentatively, that Beijing's commuter do have a worse commuting efficiency and worse job housing relationship, qualitative one. It's not quantitative one. This is a practical one. It's real commuting distance. We're not talking about the minimum or the maximum. We're talking about the actual one here. And I think we do learn a lot from the case study. I think some of the big lessons, the big policy implications that we had was that the smarter data can have the potential to be a much more dynamic source of data for planning and policy studies than the traditional survey data, and also when enhance the traditional planning approaches to collecting data like interviews of local experts, futures and land use data, and smart data can be used to generate many more new insights and new knowledge. And also, as you can see in the minimum and then the actual commuting flows that we use GIS to visualize. And GIS is a wonderful tool to visualize and publicize the new knowledge that we generate and use the new kind of data. In terms of future research, I think the data we have now for the Beijing case study was 2008 data. Was only the bus commuter data. That's the data, only data that local authority was willing to share with us. I think once we have something good like this study, this case study, to show the local authority, maybe I think we can get better and more recent data, maybe including the subway swipe card data as well, that we can conduct better study, the better study for Beijing. And once we finish the good study for Beijing or some good studies for Beijing, I was also interested in expanding my studies to other cities, maybe including Boston. And this, something else I want to do was that, and now I was, what I was doing now was trying to kind of describe and quantify the status quo. What I'm interested in later was, trying to understand, what I call, plan commute, which is to try to quantify what kind of impacts of a policy or plan have on job housing relationship using the same framework that I have been using in the Beijing's case study. So in terms, the graphically speaking, we now know how to estimate the minimum, the actual, and then the maximum commute. We also know how to visualize these flows, but we don't know yet how we can measure the design plan commute, and we don't know how to visualize the intended commute. And this just showing you examples, some ongoing research of mine, just showing you that what kind of impacts the bus rapid transit will have on bus commuters' flows, bus commuter bus commuters' commuting patterns or job housing relationship in Beijing. This just showing this figure just showing what will happen to bus commuters' job housing relationship. If we offer bus rapid transit services to and from 6 job employment centers in Beijing. And we are also in the future. I'm also interested in knowing more about the non-commuting trip efficiency. I think people now choose to where to live. Maybe they may first facilitate them to reach a certain other facilities or services that charge more than the job access. For example, people might travel better school. People might need access to pass. So I want to understand better, in my future studies, understand better the most specific accessibility to those, meaningful destinations in people's life. And this just showing you some of my research in Nanjing, a mother city of China, which I have better data in Beijing. I was able to, my co-author was able to map out the more specific accessibility for the city of Nanjing. And this is just another visualization of the accessibility, which is showing you that why certain people don't choose bicycle, as their commuting mode. This map just showing you the gaps between the accessibility of different modes. And with that, I think I close my presentation. I welcome any questions and comments. Thank you.